Well, hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Maggie Bartlett, the Program Director for the Global Virus Network, and we're excited to have you for this Forefront of Virology special webinar episode. We have Dr. Audrey Richard here, who is a molecular and cell biologist specializing in emerging viruses. She has been focused on viral entry mechanisms and host interactions and implications for broad-spectrum antivirals, and since 2019 has been playing a really critical role in the European research infrastructure through ERINHA, where she is the Deputy Director and Chief Scientific Officer and Director of Operations. She's in charge of the scientific strategy, funding acquisition, and collaborative research efforts, particularly in pandemic preparedness, which is a shared mission for both ERINHA and GVN. Audrey has been instrumental in a number of the high-impact projects from Isidore to Inceptor, which I'm sure many of our members are aware of, as well as many others. And her work really bridges across this high-containment research facility need and the development of medical countermeasures for high-consequence pathogens, reinforcing Europe's readiness for infectious disease threats and really setting a model globally. And so I'm very pleased that we have Audrey here. Dr. Richard, I'm going to hand it over to you to enlighten us about ERINHA and the different capacity.
Thank you so much, Maggie, for the introduction. Hello, everybody. We are very grateful to the invitation and for the opportunity to co-host this webinar with the Global Virus Network. So, as already mentioned, I'm the Deputy Director of the European Research Infrastructure on Highly Pathogenic Agents. And before we really dive into ERINHA's activities, I just wanted to give you maybe a little bit of context as to why we are here today and why this talk might actually be rather timely in the current context. So just so you know, the Global Virus Network and ERINHA has very recently actually kind of formalized their collaboration through the signature of a memorandum of understanding. So we think that this webinar is actually a great kickoff of our collaboration together. And this is like really a great opportunity for ERINHA to showcase his work as a European research infrastructure, taking advantage a little bit of the platform that the Global Virus Network is offering to us today. And definitely with the very recent finalization of the WHO pandemic agreement, it seems that it remains extremely topical to actually discuss pandemic preparedness, although I think that this topic actually never gets old and never gets out of date. So just to give you, ERINHA is a little bit of a kind of particular entity, so I'm going to walk you through who we are, what we do, and what we have been involved in the last years, starting with basically our vision and our mission. So what we want to achieve ultimately and hopefully is a world better prepared to infectious disease outbreak. And the way we propose to do that, this is most likely complementary to different initiatives and different entities. In our case, we want to protect human health by coordinating high containment research, so research performed in BSL-3 and BSL-4 laboratories on emerging diseases, and ultimately strengthen preparedness for highly pathogenic threats. So we are, as I said, the European Research Infrastructure on Highly Pathogenic Agents, and we operate as a non-profit international association. And as an association, we have members, and our members are actually laboratories with BSL-3 and BSL-4 capacities. I have listed those institutions here. You can see on the right the map where our members are actually located. So we are covering now a good part of Europe, and the members that I have highlighted, INSERM, FOM, and INSA, are actually our funding members, those that initially signed the statutes of ERINHA to create us in 2017. So this is what we are legally, administratively, but what we are also is what is called an S3 landmark. I wanted to explain this because I'm expecting that maybe the current audience is not fully European. So in Europe, there is a body at the European level that is called the European Strategy Forum for Research Infrastructure that is monitoring the research infrastructure roadmap and kind of identifying gaps, making sure that Europe has all the necessary capacity to remain competitive in terms of research and development in all scientific fields. So what is an S3 landmark? It is actually an entity, a research infrastructure that has been deemed by S3 good enough to be on the roadmap and to be like a pillar of the European research area. And we are expected to be involved and to really act on several aspects. Of course, we have very importantly a scientific mission. One of them is actually to provide access to our capacities to scientific communities. I insist on that because you may hear the word access multiple times in my presentation. It is one of the core mission of a research infrastructure at EU level. So we are expected to support research through state-of-the-art resources, connect researchers together, and act at EU level, but also hopefully globally. We're also expected to have like some societal role by acting as centers of knowledge transfer to society, acting on training, fostering science literacy, and also, although it is very difficult to measure sometimes, we are also expected to have a policy and economic impact by impacting the regional development and sectoral outreach at our level and in our field. So I insisted already a little bit on the word access. This is because who we are also, it's a provider of capabilities and expertise. So let's say that we have scientists that have no access to BSL-3 and BSL-4 capabilities locally or even nationally. They can reach out to ERINHA through what we call the Central Coordinating Unit. This is what I'm part of. And depending on the request, we're going to coordinate with the ERINHA members that have those BSL-3 and BSL-4 capabilities and expertise to offer the missing service to the users that have contacted us. So this is our role as provider of services. The type of capabilities that we have, it's mainly what we are contacted for the most. It's for access to lab capacities. We are able to provide to conduct in vitro, but also in vivo research, whether it is for the investigation of host pathogen interaction, but also testing different type of countermeasures. This is something that we are requested a lot to do, testing the efficacy of an antiviral, the efficacy of a vaccine, either using quite complex ex vivo models or using animal models that are relevant for the pathogen of interest. That being said, we are also able to provide capabilities and capacities for more in the expertise area. So there I'm talking about training. This is something that we are still building and kind of polishing and consolidating, but ultimately we want to have like kind of a centralized catalog of services for training, for safely working in high containment labs, for general biosecurity and operation of a biosafety laboratory. So far, we have mostly used a train-the-trainer approach to make sure that there is some sustainability in the expertise that we are actually teaching to other people. We are also contacted for expertise services in the area of developing risk assessment, building and operating high containment facility, etc. This is mostly for countries that still do not have high containment facilities. And those capacities and capabilities, we are able to provide them through either contract research, so that will work a little bit like a CRO, but also, and that's what happens the most actually, through collaboration. So we are always happy to actually contribute to funding proposal and funding acquisition in general. So what we do, based on the fact that our member of BSL-3 and BSL-4 laboratories, I think it's not super surprising that our research portfolio is very much built around those pathogens that have a pandemic or epidemic potential, and that would include the risk group 4 pathogen, Ebola, Marburg viruses, Lassa virus, Nipah, Endra, Crimean, Congo hemorrhagic fever, also emerging pathogen and disease X. This is something that we are very interested in, as well as other epidemic-prone pathogen, and that would include a lot the respiratory pathogen, vector-borne pathogen, etc. Overall, you can consider that we are aligning with the pathogen prioritization framework of the WHO that has been updated last year and that has now adopted a more family-driven approach. So this has expanded actually the priority list of families that WHO consider needs and require urgent research and development due to the lack of medical countermeasure against those pathogens currently. So this is what ERINHA is trying to focus on. As an association, we have statutes, but this is not just administration or just legal framework for us. This is really important because it defines our strategic goals, our scope of action, and also our position in the European landscape. So to clarify a little bit what we are meant to deliver around that very overarching mission of safeguarding Europe through coordinated high containment research, we have identified a number of strategic goals to achieve that big mission and big vision. So as I said, access is definitely one of the most important goals. Coordination of BSL-3 and BSL-4 activities as well, because this is something that has not, before ERINHA had not necessarily been done before. That gives us the possibility of host large-scale research program, and this is one of the area where ERINHA is trying to be involved the most. We support research excellence, of course, mobilize funding, very important to achieve the final mission, share expertise and best practices, again, very important mission also in our role as an S3 landmark, as I just mentioned, lead a think tank on biosafety, but also biosecurity. It is very important that we remain involved in those discussions, especially in the post-pandemic society, I would say, and finally increase visibility of high containment research, but also increase the visibility of safe and secure high containment research. To be able to achieve those goals, we have identified some very specific operational priorities. I'm identifying them because I will be talking about our activities based on those priorities. This is where we concentrate our effort, and those priorities actually support our ability to deliver at the scientific, operational, and policy level. So again, not surprisingly, we are focusing a lot of our effort on service provision to user communities. It's one of our core missions, as I already said, but in our field of action, let's say, the development of medical countermeasure is also critical due to the nature of the pathogen that we are interested in, that are, for most of them, not associated with any licensed vaccine or any efficacious antiviral. We are also trying to secure activities in the domain of capacity building. Also, a lot of work being done, lobbying and advocacy for the sustainability of pandemic preparedness and response research, as well as international cooperation in general. And we have also activities in open science and fair data. This is a very transversal activity that is actually of interest for many fields in science, and that includes us as well, of course. So if we want to look, so this is a little bit like our kind of ID card. I thought I would also give you a little bit of an overview of our main actions. I'm saying main actions because it would have been difficult to really describe everything that we are currently doing. That being said, the way we operate the most is through, so we implement most of our strategy through the Horizon Europe program. Again, because I do not know if most of the audience is European or not, I wanted just to give you a little bit of an overview of that framework of funding that is very important at EU level. It's basically organized in 3 pillars: excellent science, global challenges, and innovative Europe. And you have like a 4th transversal pillar for what is called widening countries in Europe. It's a subset of EU countries that are being supported to achieve excellence in science, and then collaborate with what is called advanced countries. That being said, for ERINHA, the main source of funding reside in the research infrastructure work program. So when I talk about a research infrastructure project, you can consider that this is because it is part of that very specific work program with specific objective, and it's a strategic mission for the European Union. And the other research and development actions are usually funded through the health work program, where we have been able to secure also funding for very specific pandemic preparedness action. So if we look at our different operational priorities that I have just described, you can see that I have associated a number of projects. In the provision of services to user communities, we have been involved and we have led actually the implementation of the EasyDoor project. I will tell you a little bit more about that very specific action. I'll come back later to the development of medical countermeasures, because this is where we are also very active. For capacity building and the sustainability of pandemic preparedness and response research, I will be telling you a little bit more about the Interceptor project that we are also leading. And unfortunately, for the sake of for saving time, I will not really go into detail or dive too much into the Evora, by COVID and Oscars project, but just so you know, we are involved. You can still maybe have a look at the website, or I'm happy to answer a question at the end of the webinar. In terms of development of medical countermeasures, so it's a more recent involvement actually for ERINHA, but now we are involved in multiple projects that have very important goals. That includes those Horizon Europe funded project, as I just described, that's NAVIP, CCHF Vaccine and Appeal. I will tell you more about NAVIP because we lead this one and I'm able to really describe this project to more details. But the sources of funding are a little bit also more varied in that operational priority. We're also involved in some European Defence Fund funded projects, through the Counteract and Resilience project that are dedicated to the development of countermeasures against CBRN threats. And finally, as I said, we also operate as a CRO to some extent, and we have also been working with some users that were funded either by the Pandemic Antiviral Discovery Initiative or even CEPI. So if we now look a little bit more into details into that EU ecosystem that we are evolving in, we have, as I said, a strategic portfolio of research infrastructure projects that includes EasyDoor and Interceptor, that shows very much our leadership and our strategic positioning in the ecosystem. Evora is more about shaping the research infrastructure landscape around pandemic preparedness and having the research infrastructure really organized and structured for that pandemic preparedness goal. And the OSCAR project is really anchoring us in the European open science cloud landscape. But again, I won't be able to dive into much details for those two projects. So now if we want to talk a little bit about the EasyDoor project, maybe some of you attending this webinar are familiar with that project. So for us, it has been a turning point in the life of ERINHA. This is our signature project, I like to call it. At EU level, maybe it won't mean much to people, but it's the first ever what was called an InfraServe project, meaning a project, a big action exclusively dedicated to providing services to user communities. So it was meant to bring together a lot of different infrastructure, integrate a lot of services, and serve a lot of user and communities. So this is a project that has definitely raised our profile in the RI landscape and at the EU level in general. If we look a little bit more, so I'm kind of presenting here the research infrastructures that are involved in EasyDoor. So you can see that in addition of ERINHA, we have gathered with us a really high number of infrastructures, 16 on top of us. And because most of them are operating just like ERINHA, meaning that you have that infrastructure, but multiple members are actually able to provide services. By gathering those 17 research infrastructure, we were able to actually gather over 150 providers of access to services for users that were in need of structural biology, bioimaging, screening capacities, in vivo capacities, in vitro, clinical trial, the whole pipeline for addressing any type of research that could be required for pandemic preparedness, but also response. The Isidore strategy, it's not unlike ERINHA strategy in terms of portfolio. This makes a lot of sense due to the scope of the Isidore project. So the way it operates, that type of project, that InfraServe type of project, is that we launch calls for proposal. Interested scientists submit application to those different calls for proposal, and then we select project and we give them free of charge access to our catalog of services. For the Isidore project, because of the scope, again, we have decided to launch what we call the response call for proposal. This was for COVID-19 and the SARS-CoV-2 variant, but also during the lifetime of the project, there was the multi-country outbreak, multi-country Mpox outbreak in 2022. This is something that was unexpected. We decided to actually address it. So we launched a second response call for proposal, what we call also the emergency call for proposal. This was actually launched about 3 weeks before it was qualified as a public health of emergency of international concern by WHO. So we were really ready to support scientists in conducting research that would advance knowledge and also countermeasure for addressing Mpox. In addition to that, once we had used up the fund for response, and when the PHEICs were actually over, we were able to conduct our preparedness program, and this one was organized around 4 different calls for proposal, one for RG4 pathogen, one for vector-borne pathogens, respiratory pathogens, and what we've called the other type of pandemic-prone pathogens that could include the poxviridae. To design that strategy and to design the calls for proposal, we actually also put together a board, what we call the Strategic Advisory Board of Isidore, and this was to make sure that we would align with the overarching European and international strategies for pandemic preparedness. So we had representative of the European Commission for Research and Innovation, WHO, Director General HERA, ECDC, the EMA, SAPI, etc. So all the actors that may have some strategic interest and have also some mandate into managing those crises at European or global level. So because, as I said, Isidore was actually launching calls for proposal, we were receiving applications from users in Europe, mostly also from other continents. The system we had was also using our pre-application. So I'm giving you here the few numbers. We are actually coming to an end for the Isidore project. So this is almost final. We received 458 pre-application. 243 of them were submitted as full application, and we selected 186 projects. So we supported the progress, and we supported users for almost 200 projects. So they received free of charge support from the Isidore project. Most of them, and not most of them, but 40% of them were dedicated to to the development or adaptation of medical countermeasures. And interestingly also, because this is not often the case in research infrastructure project, 14% of our users were actually from the private sector. And I'm just going to give you an interesting example of one of those users. This was the Pharma Holdings SME. This is an SME that doesn't have any actual lab space, and they actually came to Isidore and received, and this is where where very integrated and very large-scale project like EZIDOR can really show impact. That SME had a molecule that they needed to test, that they wanted to test with some pandemic-prone pathogens. So they received some support from multiple research infrastructure for that, for in vitro and in vivo studies that included EVA, also ERINHA and VetBionet, EVA being the European Viral Archive and VetBionet being the research infrastructure for biocontained research, for biocontained veterinary research, sorry. When they were quite confident with the result, they actually received also some regulatory advice that was from the research infrastructure EATRIS for translational medicine, and they are actually currently implementing a phase 2 trial with us and in collaboration with the ECRID project that was with the help of the ECRIN research infrastructure that is very much specialized in clinical projects. So you can see here the type of progress and advances that we've been able to provide to a user like Pharma Holdings. This is only one example. I think it is a very major example of impact. Of course, some users were not necessarily as advanced as Pharma Holdings with their molecules. They did not necessarily want actually to test a medical countermeasure. We've been able to actually support at very different level the research of different scientists, but this was just to give you a little bit of an idea of the type of impact that EZIDOR could have. EZIDOR is coming to an end, so I'm also using this as a platform to tell you that the EZIDOR conference is going to happen on the 11th and 12th of June. So if you want to register, please use the QR code. We would be happy to have people online. This is a hybrid meeting for just capacity purposes. We are inviting you to an online registration. This is going to showcase the results of the EZIDOR project, but also is going to show the actions at EU level for pandemic preparedness. So if you have a specific interest in that domain, we'll be happy to welcome you. Now to that other research infrastructure project that we are leading, the Interceptor project. This is a very different type of research infrastructure project, but also with some quite high expected impact if we are able to achieve all of our objectives. So Interceptor is, the ambition is to build a global, so we want to go beyond the EU. We want to build a global network of high containment labs to improve cooperation, interoperability, and access. So access, again, is one of the keywords for that project, because it's not that there have not been some networks of BSL-4 laboratories in the past, but there is nothing that is actually trying to open access to BSL-3 and BSL-4 capacities. So we are trying to expand the ERINHA model a little bit beyond the EU and try to create something way more global. The idea is to, that being said, being able to enhance biorisk management, also align, standardize, and try to also expand capacities for training. Something that is very critical for high and maximum containment is the expertise, is to have trained staff and to be able to continue to train that staff and to upgrade their skill. So this is something that Interceptor is very much focused on: resource sharing, harmonization, interoperability, as I said. So this specific project positions us as a more in the international level for cooperation of those high containment lab. And we have built and designed this project because, again, global health threat, this is not just an EU problem, this is a global problem. And for addressing global problem, you probably want to have a coordinated capacity to do that. So it would really be extremely important to be able to have that capacity at international level. So this is why we are trying to connect those laboratories across continent to reinforce ultimately global health security. There are four main pillars of works in Interceptor. As I said, human capital, knowledge sharing, and access to high containment services, and also the strategic positioning of all of that, because we want to maintain that and we want to make it sustainable. This is something that we absolutely want to go beyond the grant that we have secured from the European Commission, and the ultimate ambition would be to become a reference for high containment infrastructure and for basically research infrastructure services in BSL-3 and BSL-4 environment. We want to achieve faster access to those laboratories. This is something that is a little bit limiting at this time, is the lead time to get access, especially to BSL-4 capacities. We would like to have like expert teams across the globe that would be that we could mobilize in terms in case of an outbreak, and basically be able to have that bigger platform able to support, of course, European, but most importantly, global preparedness. So now, because again, I don't have time to talk about our all of our research infrastructure endeavors and work and actions, I still wanted to give you a little bit of an overview of what I call an emerging pillar of activities, because ERINHA has been operating since, so it was created in 2017, has been operating since 2019, but it was quite recent that we've been able to actually really also implement and act on one of our also main missions. It's the development of medical countermeasures. This took us a little bit of time to get that visibility and to get the capacity also internally to prepare those funding proposal, but we are now very involved in those activities. We have the NAVIP and Appeal project for broad spectrum antivirals, CCHF vaccine for vaccine and immunotherapy, unsurprisingly for the CCHF virus. And as I told you, we have also counteract and resilience for various medical countermeasures against biological infectious threats. Because we are the coordinator of the NAVIP project, we need to tell you a little bit more about it. This is a project dedicated entirely to broad spectrum antivirals. But this is something that ERINHA is not implementing by itself. This is actually also a great opportunity to establish new collaborations. So here we have a consortium of 5 different what we call beneficiaries at EU level. We have GSK with us, CSIC, the biggest research institution in Spain, the Max Planck Institute, as well as Afilogic, which is a French SME. So you can see here that we've been able to gather a rather cross-sectoral consortium of actors. They're all bringing their expertise and all their knowledge for the project. But interestingly, because of the very specific nature of ERINHA, we were also able to bring a number of our members. So the project can actually benefit from very extensive in vitro, ex vivo, and in vivo BSL-3 and BSL-4 capacities, which we thought was crucial for achieving the objective of such a project. So we have 12 partners from 9 countries, trying to achieve very global objectives, advance the development of broad-spectrum antivirals, and strengthen the EU readiness and the response capacity of the EU to viral threats. We have decided to go rather broad on the idea of broad-spectrum antivirals. This was very important to us, and also a very great opportunity to leverage the capacities of ERINHA. As I said, what we are also meant to be and meant to do is to coordinate BSL-3 and BSL-4 activities and be able to go like quite large scale in terms of program. So this was an excellent way to demonstrate that and have all the most of the ERINHA members collaborate together. And we have prioritized kind of the usual suspects in that project. We have the Coronaviridae, the Filoviridae with Sudan, Ebola, and Marburg viruses. Very interested also in some vector-borne pathogens through the Flaviviridae, Dengue, West Nile, Zika. The Neuroviridae with only one representative, but this is one that is becoming a little bit alarming at EU level, that's Crimean Congo hemorrhagic fever virus. And finally, in the Paramyxoviridae, we have chosen Nipah virus. So the idea for us is to be able to identify either molecules that would at least cover one family, the big ambition being to identify molecules with cross-family antiviral action. We are about a year in the project, so we've been able to conduct a little bit of work, but I won't be able to tell you right now whether or not we have achieved that mission of discovering some very broad spectrum antivirals. But the way we do that is through what we've called a multi-year roadmap. I won't necessarily go into all those details, but basically it's a very straightforward project. This is about screening, so conducting 4 large-scale campaigns targeting 4 of the viral families that we have identified as priority. We are leveraging the GSK actually compound library for that project and the high throughput screening capacities of KU Leuven. So they have been able to actually screen 4 times a library of 300,000 compounds. In addition to that, we obviously want to understand how the molecules we will have identified and selected work, and validate them and bring them to what we call the real world. So the preclinical validation that I call done right is based on the idea that we want to also implement a roadmap that improve and enhance the chain of translatability, meaning that what has been a big problem so far in antiviral discovery is what is called the valley of death, is the lack of translatability between the in vitro and in vivo models compared to compared to the human model and the human physiology. So here we are kind of bridging that with ex vivo models that will hopefully help us identify better compound, as in compound that will still show some activity when used in humans. And finally, this was also a very ambitious call for proposal from the European Commission. We will be also conducting some early clinical activities and also trying to optimize the delivery of those molecules that we will have identified. The idea for NAVIC being to build a rapid response pipeline for antiviral development. So we also hope that this can remain a model that can be used in the future should there be an outbreak. So to give you an idea of where we are at, this is very focused on the high throughput screening activities, but KU Leuven has done an amazing job at performing those campaigns. So all of them have been. So we have done the primary screen for all the different families. We've been able for the filovirus family to identify, and that by we, I mean GSK that has analyzed the data. They have identified 71 hits. Here for flaviviruses, just want to mention that the campaign was actually conducted using a triplexed assay. So this is actually 67 compounds that are active against Japanese encephalitis virus, Zika virus, and dengue. So this was all done in the same campaign at the same time. That being said, for the sake of scientific rigor, we're still conducting the dose response and counter screen. But we should be, the number of hits identified should be close to what has been identified here after the primary screen that was again using 3 different viruses. And we are still fairly early in the Cedar virus campaign that is used as a surrogate for Nipah virus. This is something that is currently done in Nipah virus research. And finally, the coronavirus family is represented by SARS-CoV-2, and later in the project we will test those compounds that are active against SARS-CoV-2 with SARS-CoV and MERS-CoV. Pan-coronavirus antivirals being something that is very much sought after in the scientific field. And what's coming next is that ex vivo and in vivo validation of the compounds. So as I said, we are going to use some more complex ex vivo model such as organoids, precision cut lung slides, And ultimately, when we have promising reason to do so, in vivo models. So we want also to implement that specific roadmap of validation to decrease the number of animals that will be used and to decrease also the time spent in high containment using animals. This is also for definitely safety purposes. In addition to that, again, the mode of actions, and this is a work that is led by the Max Planck Institute using cell painting, chemical proteomics, as well as thermal proteome profiling. The improvement of the delivery of those compounds will be done by Affilogic, that French SME that has a very specific technology called the nanophytins. Those are small single-chain proteins that are very resistant to temperature and pH. So we hope that we can very much improve time of clearance and that sort of parameters. And as I said, also, we will implement early clinical trials. This is a phase 2A that is planned, and we are also working with WHO for the target product profile. One of them has already been approved, I believe, and this is for dengue, because the clinical trial will be done for dengue patients. This is work, both the TPPs and clinical work is led by the University of Oxford in their Vietnam unit. So this is an area that is endemic for dengue, and we hope that we will be able to recruit up to 300 patients, but Oxford has decided also to add some additional sites, so it's going to cover more of more countries in Asia, where the virus is endemic. I've been talking a lot about our role at EU level for quite big scale project. I still wanted to mention that we are also operating in a more global ecosystem. We are part of the CEPI centralized laboratory network. This is the largest network of vaccine testing laboratories. This is something that we have been involved in very recently. The agreement has been signed just a few weeks ago. So this laboratory network is meant to support the CEPI-supported developers and others to evaluate priority pathogen vaccines. And it has so far served over 60 vaccine developers to assess their candidates at all stages of development. So we are now part of that big community around vaccine development in collaboration with CEPI. And more generally speaking, in addition to the research and development activities, in addition to the EU-funded project, I wanted to also kind of acknowledge all the work that is also done in terms of external affairs, advocacy, lobbying, with many entities, organizations, initiatives, projects at EU level, international level, in different domains. This is some sort of map, a very complicated map, the idea being to just convey the message that we are trying to connect with all the actors that are relevant and could help us by establishing collaborations, links, interaction to achieve our missions. So, and I think I'm almost late. I'm timing myself. I'm a minute away from the alarm to go off, so it's not too bad. Just maybe as a main takeaway message, I always present ERINHA as being fairly unique in its organization, in the way it works, in the type of activities that we address. I don't know if that's exactly true. I've not encountered any entity that was exactly similar. We are that integrated, coordinated, sustainable, high containment research infrastructure. I don't think there is anything as sustainable as we are so far that is also providing access to our capacities. It's a very unique feature in those BSL-3, BSL-4 network. We have that dual role, so research infrastructure for sure, but also now we are becoming a more strategic actor in research and development, and this is sorry for the alarm, this is a very important role that we are embracing now, and we are very much enthusiastic about those new activities and hope that we will be able to achieve really great results with those new collaborators also that we have been able to meet through those projects and through those very multi multinational project, but we are also involved in regulatory and policy actions, something that I've not been able to be very detailed about, but just so you know, this does exist. And what's coming next as a very, very big important action is the European Partnership for Pandemic Preparedness. This is something that is led by ANRS-MEE. This is a French entity, and they are coordinating that huge project partnership. This is a very specific model of action at EU level. It's going to be implemented in 2 phases, one of 2-3 years and one of 5 to 8 years. This is going to represent 200 million of investment from the EU member state and from the European Commission, 50-50. The whole, I guess, it's fairly obvious, the main mission being to ensure that the EU is prepared for the next pandemics. And ERINHA in that partnership is in charge of the readiness of the research infrastructure ecosystem in basic and preclinical research, as opposed to what is done in the partnership in clinical research. And this is based loosely on the Isidore model. All of this, again, I'm circling back to our vision and to our main mission, a world better prepared to outbreaks. So everything that we do, we hope will help protect societies in the future and boost European resilience. I don't want to go too far into that conclusion and go beyond my time. So thank you very much for your attention, and I'm very happy to take any questions.
Audrey, that was fantastic. We have a few questions in the chat that all address you. Sendermund asks, says, such a comprehensive and informative presentation, thank you. 1, how many core staff are supported by the European Union's hard money, and how many staff are supported by the project funds?
That would be roughly 50-50 at this point. So we are 10 ERINHA employees. So we are 12 involved at the CCU, but there are some interim seconded staff, including the Director General. So actually the Director General is a very sustainable position at ERINHA. The rest, so we have also Ariane online that is seconded partly by interim. The rest of us, 10 of us, ERINHA staff, half of them, but that's not necessarily. I'm fully supported by the hard money or the soft money. That being said, I would say if I want to address the question fully, so to us, soft money, it's the EU money, it's the project funds, it's EU money. The hard money is the money coming from the members, and I cannot say that it's EU money. It's institutional money. It's money that the members decide to invest in their ERINHA membership, and that's also supporting a lot of our staff. How might... Oh, sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh.
I was going to read out loud. Please go ahead.
No, how might Asian, African, and American investigators engage with ERINHA, and similarly Norway, Switzerland, Iceland, and other non-EU countries? So
there are different answers to that. If you are really talking about like, are you or are you not eligible to the EU funding that we are very much trying to secure for achieving our missions and implementing our strategies, I would say it depends. Norway, Switzerland, they have some mechanism. They are not EU member states, but they have what is called association agreements. Most of the time, researchers in those countries can secure funding from the EU. Same for other countries. There is a list of third countries that are by nature, because they are low to middle income countries, eligible to EU funding. The information is available online, and in the end, there are not that many countries that are not eligible. So, and if it is to collaborate very specifically with ERINHA, I would suggest that you reach out to us directly so we can discuss that.
asks, how can US-based academics, startups, or biotechs engage with ERINHA? And are there restrictions for those entities outside of the EU?
Usually, when there are restrictions, it's usually around, again, it's always the challenge. It's around the funding. But that being said, there is, if we talk about EU funding, US entities are actually eligible. This is due to a reciprocal clause between the NIH and the European Commission. If it's just for bilateral collaboration, we can also discuss, but there is no, and if it is because of the current situation in the US, etc., right now there is no restriction for us to be working with US scientists, entities, and such. So again, if you do have some ideas in mind, please feel free to reach out. We don't have any reason to tell you right now that this is not possible. If for us to say it's not possible would be we do not have your model, for example, for doing your type of research, but that would be it. So I would encourage you to reach out to us.
Then about investigators in non-EU accessing central resources like the BSL-3 and 4 training. So are investigators outside of the EU able to utilize the BSL-3 or 4 services?
No restriction whatsoever. And again, it depends. If you do have your own funding, everything is always much easier. If you don't, then we may be able to help secure some funding. But overall, it's everything that ERINHA can do is coordinated by the central coordinating unit that I am a part of. So if you have any idea, any wish, any willingness to collaborate with us, I would very much encourage you to contact us. There is currently no restriction, and we are always open to establish new collaborations. So please don't hesitate. That would be through the contact.eu email address that is currently on the screen.
For submissions to take to utilize some of these opportunities, is it rolling, or are there certain times of year where people should pay attention to look at to submit for these?
EU level, you mean?
Yes.
For opportunities, the calendar has changed a little bit. So right now, if there is anything that people, want to try at EU level, look at it right now. The deadline will be in September. There is one specific topic on pandemic preparedness. In the research infrastructure work program, there is a call for proposal for something that could resemble Isidore. This is something that we are obviously very much interested in, and we're going to position ERINHA for that new grant. Deadline this year are in September. Usually it's much earlier in the year, so as soon as you as you are done with your September deadlines, you may want to have a look to the 2026 and 2027 opportunities. They may actually be launched much earlier, and that would be launched in late 2025 for submission in the first quarter. I don't know. That's a very specific answer. I don't know if that's exactly what you wanted to know, Maggie.
Yes, no, it was perfect. And I do see we have another question. Are there opportunities for doctoral students to do their thesis with NAVIP or other projects?
As far as I know, all the recruitment have already happened in the project that have been implemented actually in 2024. So NAVIP, Appeal, everything is already a year in. As far as I know, the partners have already recruited both doctoral students and postdoctoral researchers.
Yeah, but that makes sense, and to look forward for other opportunities as they come up. And then, are there currently ongoing projects that evaluate the impact of collaborations like ERINHA on increasing security and pandemic resilience?
So this is the assessment of impact of research infrastructure is a very important topic and question for, that S3 entity, and for us as ERINHA. It's very difficult to actually measure, but we are actually currently looking for a company or an expert company to accompany us in conducting that kind of exercise. This is something that we do want to evaluate. So this will be an ERINHA funded activity. Actually, we're not currently aware of a grant or something at EU level that would be strategically funded for that type of activities.
I think that is our last question. I want to thank you, Dr. Audrey Richard, for your fantastic overview of ERINHA. GVN is very
Thank you very much
excited.
again for the opportunity. That was great.
Please feel free to reach out to her if you have any questions about the things that were presented, want to get involved, or let us know at GVN things that you would like to see us do together in the future. We thank you all for attending today and look forward to seeing you at our next webinar.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.